Welcome to the podcast. It's Thursday. We're going to talk NASCAR, racing, NHRA, all kinds of stuff with Rod Mullins here. We're a day later this week than we have been because Rod yesterday was at Bristol Motor Speedway catching up on some news. And Rod, update us. What's going on? It seems like there was so much that you got into yesterday.
Well, let me see if I have that handy right quick. Let me reach back here. It's a big league year at Bristol. That's what
Yeah.
they're going to be having. Yesterday was a preview. It was a preview for the 2025 year at Bristol Motor Speedway, and that's going to include both Cup races and also the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. Going to be there at Bristol in April and also back again in September, and that's when the playoffs begin. But in between there, we're going to have a variety of different shows. There's going to be a monster truck thing that's going to be taking place there, I believe, in about late April or early May. We'll give you the details on it a little bit later. Plus, the NHRA is coming back to Bristol Thunder Valley and Bristol Dragway, and we had a chance to meet not only three drivers from the NASCAR series, but a chance to meet Austin Prock of John Force Racing, who drives in the NHRA. And on top of that, we had a chance to meet Danny Graves, Cincinnati Reds Hall of Famer, and also Tim Hudson, Baseball Hall of Famer for the Atlanta Braves. And they were just talking yesterday about one, the big setup. They'd never, I think Danny Graves had never been at a racetrack before. He gets out and takes some laps around with Austin Prock in the pit car, the Camaro that they have there at Bristol Motor Speedway, and it took Danny Graves there a little while to probably get together his lunch because he said he felt like he was going to puke for about an hour or two after he'd done all this in the little laps around the track. I opted not to take it this time around, but had a chance to get with them. That was their first time, like I said, for Danny Graves at least. And I think he was impressed, really impressed with they're going to play a baseball game here. And it could possibly be the largest attended baseball game ever in Major League Baseball history when they have this thing on August 2nd.
Yeah, it'd be a surprise if it isn't, to be honest, as far as that goes. So you opted for lunch instead of riding
Yes, I
around
opted
for
for lunch, and I just, I'd been through that before, and I've been through that with Darrell Waltrip, and Darrell Waltrip just told me, he said, get ready for it, and sure enough, it was probably for about 3 or 4 hours afterwards. And the big problem was, and I think it was with Danny Graves and maybe with Tim Hudson also, it was that habit that I want to hold my neck and my head just like I'm doing right now, looking at the camera. And then you're in the turns, you're in the banks, your head's going to sling this way. That's the reason why the drivers have this little thing to support their head to where they see it all the time, the way they're going. And the G forces, that was one thing that was being discussed yesterday with Vice President and General Manager Jerry Caldwell with Danny Graves and Tim Hudson talking about the G forces. They didn't, I don't think Danny Graves really pictured it was going to be that many G forces on your head, but it is. There's a lot of G forces. It's pressing down on you, and here you are trying to fight it back, and that's going to cause all equilibrium in you to kind of go out the window at that point.
and Bristol's a short track.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
your maximum speed's what, about 125 maybe?
Yeah, I think about 120, 125, if especially after they get out of that turn and get down that straight stretch, they'll rev back up and go to at least about 120 down through there. Then they have to brake, and they also either have to ride up, either take low or go high. And, depending on how the cars are and stuff, they'll slow down a little bit then, but they're still holding some good momentum. And then come back out of the turn, coming out of turn four or going into turn one, and they're going to be hitting the accelerator full blast so they can make it down the straightaway there on the front stretch. So it's a very demanding racetrack. It's not like a Martinsville where you have to go and you have to hit the brakes ever so often. This is you've got about I think altogether for getting a lap in is probably around 10 seconds or somewhere like that altogether, or around 10 seconds. So you've got so much time to react, and you've got to use the brakes, but you have to use them sparingly because if you don't use the brakes in the right way, you'll lose them before the race is over with. It's 500 grueling miles, at least for the Cup drivers, 500 miles of this, and it's a little bit of braking, but it's a lot of gas the entire time.
I imagine there's a lot of wrestling the steering wheel too. That
Yeah.
for people who think that they're just driving for 500 miles, well, one, driving 500 miles with your family to the beach is challenging enough, but doing it at that speed with all those banks and all that turning and braking and everything else, it's physically demanding.
Well, let's not leave out either the fact that you're also riding on concrete.
Yeah.
And if you've ever rode on concrete before, especially for me, where I'm at, if you're on the way to going to Johnson City, a certain part of the road there on I-26, it's the ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk is what you hear of changing to each one of the blocks or at least the slabs that have been poured. At Bristol, it's one continuous slab, but it's rough all the way around the track. I mean, it's just rough, and you've got to have good grip on your rear tires, and you've got to have some downforce that's going to be able to hold you down, or otherwise, guess what? You're going to be all over the track. So, yeah, there's a lot of factors with it. That concrete will really wear down tires pretty quick, depending on what kind of tire formula that Goodyear comes up with. You know, a couple of years ago, we had a situation at Bristol where the tires just were shredded. They were shredded in no time, and then a couple of races later, I think we went to the fall race. They were perfect. They worked just fine. They just tweaked them a little bit, but they didn't have as much trouble with them in the fall race as they did in the spring race. So, go figure. That's just the way Bristol is.
You mentioned talking with one of the members of the John Force team, NHRA team. There's news today about somebody else from the John Force team that caught us by some surprise.
Yeah, it caught me by surprise. I know that we had not talked about NHRA here in quite a while, but it's time now to really talk about it, I think. And that is Robert Hyde, who used to drive the AAA, the automotive, the funny car for John Force Racing. He had also married one of John Force's daughters at one point. Of course, they split, but he was still closely connected with John Force. He felt like John Force had given him a lot and had provided him with a lot of opportunities. And last year, Robert Hyde didn't drive on the circuit, and a lot of people were wondering what was going on with Robert. There were some that said he had to have hip replacement surgery. There are others that says that his health might be a little bit more grave than that. Nobody really knows at this point. It's just he's missing from the pit area, and he's also missing from driving on the track. And so they had two drivers that ended up having to replace drivers with John Force Racing. Austin Prock, who we got the chance to meet with yesterday, he stepped in for Robert Height, moving from his first ride. And then you had Jack Beckman, who came in to replace John Force after the big accident last year. And so it was announced this morning that Robert Height is going to be stepping down as the president of John Force Racing, and he's going to be shifting some responsibilities and duties over to another individual within the company. He said he hated to do it, but he said that he needed to spend some more time with his wife and his family, and that's understandable. I can understand that, but he's still kind of vague. We're still kind of vague on understanding and knowing what's going on. Is this one of those things of where he is just simply getting out of the sport? He doesn't want to do it anymore, or is it a medical reason? Now, in the case of John Force, which we've talked about before, this is purely medical reasons and everything, because they're wanting to go and give him the go ahead eventually to get back in one of the funny cars and race down the track. But I don't see that happening here quite yet. I think there's going to be a lot of soul searching by John Force probably before it's all said and done. So that's as it stands right now. Robert Height, who's been probably one of the most consistent drivers out of John Force Racing, he's stepping down as president of the company, and so he's going to be focusing on family for a little while.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's get to the NASCAR. Here, Christopher Bell needs to start sharing. He's
Yep.
taking all the wins. What's going on? And so another win, three straight now for Christopher Bell.
Yep.
God, this what a streak this is. This feels like it feels I don't know. It feels unprecedented. I know it's happened before, but I mean, in this competitive day and age, this feels
Yep.
like something significant.
Yeah, I don't know. It's he's not had bad luck yet. He says he's had some bad luck, but as we look at it and watch it from television and see it from the television standpoint, he's not really had that much trouble. And so we're kind of like of the attitude, okay, sooner or later you're going to run out of this good luck, and then it's going to be bad luck for you before all is said and done. And I look at that and I look at the exact opposite of this prism, so to speak, and I look at Ty Gibbs, who has not finished well at all this entire season. And it goes back to last season too. It goes back to the end of the 2024 season. Ty Gibbs just he wasn't being able to complete laps, wasn't able to go out and keep his car together at different times. I've really wondered about it. What's going to happen and what's going on with Ty Gibbs there? But on the other hand, it seems like all the magic, all the juju or whatever has come into Christopher Bell's lap, and there he is, and he's been at the front or near the front when he needed to be to pull off races. And I think the biggest thing right now that's what's going to be taking place is if he can go and continue this momentum going into Las Vegas, he'll be the first, I think, four-time winner right out of the gate from the season since Bill Elliott, and that goes back quite a ways. So it's one of those things of where you're kind of waiting, you're kind of on, how can I say this, bated breath, so to speak, I guess, and waiting to find out what's going to really happen to Christopher Bell before the season's over with. We'll just have to wait and see about it.
It feels silly to say, but you're almost, you almost might be inclined to say, man, save some of these for later.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
also,
and that's true.
you take them when you get them also.
Right.
So yeah, great run for him so far, and then you see if he can keep it going. Let's go off the track and talk some announcing news, I guess. Carl Edwards, the recent NASCAR Hall of Famer, has a new job, and among others, added to the Prime team. Talk about Edwards and the others who've been added to the mix there.
Well, I think this was a big move considering what they were going to do. And I didn't expect Carl Edwards. When I watched him on TV before, when he was doing some color commentary on Fox, I thought he did exceptionally well. He and Kevin Harvick at times would do some calling of the race, and then he did some with another driver. And then Carl Edwards just retired and didn't really know, we've not really, I guess, fully understood the reasons why he retired. But then to see him here in the last couple of years, kind of getting back into the limelight, so to speak, it makes me wonder, is he going to try to make another run for it and try to drive again? But this time around, he got signed with Amazon Prime with their coverage. He's also going to be joined with Kim Kuhn, who's going to be in the pits. I think Marty Snyder is also going to be in the pits. And they had one more name. Now, I've let the name escape me, but I think you probably have it in front of you, Chris.
Oh, yeah, let's see here. Let me scan through the story. You mentioned Carl Edwards,
All
Trevor
right.
Bain, Kim
Trevor
Kuhn.
Bain. That's the one I was
Trevor
thinking
Bain,
of.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
surprises me, just because, it hadn't been that long since he was the youngest driver ever to win the Daytona 500, it feels like. So,
Yeah, and he's drove some for Joe Gibbs Racing too along the line, but it's just not been the same thing. And Trevor Bain would be probably the first to tell you that, he's enjoying life right now. He's enjoying life. He still likes to race. He likes to follow. He's got some work. He does some work with his brother. He has a younger brother that's also racing. But one of the big things that he took a big step on while he had left racing and got out of racing, so to speak, was he and his wife opened up a coffee shop in Knoxville. And I think they've expanded now down there. And he says that keeps him busy too, along with maybe doing some things here and there for racing along the lines. But to see him on the prime lineup of what they're going to have, hey, I'm telling you, Amazon is lining up some great people for this coverage for what they're going to have for NASCAR. And I think it's going to even more fuel possibly changes later on down the line. I don't know if you caught it or not, but speaking of, the coverage and everything, did you see Bob Tasca's tirade on Fox Sports or on FS1 on Fox Sports about the NHRA coverage and the slight that they gave to NHRA coverage in favor of IndyCar racing?
yeah, I did. Yeah. I mean, and he made a lot of sense.
He did. He made a lot of sense. And I thought to myself when I first started seeing the campaign for IndyCar racing and saying the fastest sport on wheels or whatever it was called, I said, whoa, 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 wait a minute here. We've got a problem. Uh, who's Fox covering? Is Fox covering NHRA? Well, they are. They're going to be covering them again because they're still in contract. but that's almost a big slap in the face to one of your big primetime sports that you have. And when racing is not on, there's a lot of people tuning in to NHRA racing. And some people could care less about NASCAR and they'd rather watch NHRA racing because it's a little bit of a different scenario and situation because the fans get to interact with the drivers and the team a little bit more than what they do with NASCAR. And, for Tasco to come out of the car that quickly and the commentator, she was kind of dumbstruck, befuddled by the whole thing. She couldn't believe what was happening. But Tasco leveled some good points off, and I mean, I think it's going to perk somebody up in New York one way or the other. It's going to perk them up to the point of where they go when they cuss somebody out or they get on the phone to cuss somebody out, like they did in the case of John Roberts when they lost the Speed Channel coverage that they used to have on NASCAR. Or they're going to go and make changes and say, hey, we need to change this promo and we need to change this as just a part of the fastest, coverage on wheels, whatever it might be. It's a big slap in the face to Fox Sports out of this whole thing.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease, as the old saying goes.
Yep.
So you gotta do that. Hey, Southern California and NASCAR. This topic we want to talk about. It kind of reminds me now. The NFL finally, I mean, a few years now. They came back to LA. They got the Rams back from St. Louis. They got the
Right.
Chargers up from San Diego. But there for a decade or more, it may be longer than that. The NFL did not have a presence in the second biggest TV market in the country.
Yep.
Um, and NASCAR kind of got a Southern Cal problem.
Yep. NASCAR's got a Southern Cal problem, and it was expansion at a very accelerated rate, and then suddenly the bottom going out of the racing circuit, so to speak, and especially in the Southern California area. A lot of people will go back and they will look and they will say probably the best racing that they ever had was at Riverside out in California when they had the circuit go to Riverside, and that was a road race then. They had a road race at that point. But they said, let's get the idea and let's put in a sort of super speedway out here, and it's on an abandoned factory site, I believe, is where they decided to put it at. And people were just overjoyed at first, and then it kind of was like, it's not that really thrilling anymore. And so NASCAR got to the point of where they said, we've got to do something. They switched some dates out. They only had it visit once, and then it got to the point of where they said, we're shutting down Auto Club Speedway for the possibility of later on maybe going and turning it into a short track and being able to bring NASCAR back out here on the coast in a short track racing situation. Well, now doesn't look like that's going to materialize because they really, at this point, I don't think they know what they're going to do about it. So they're essentially in a holding pattern. They're going to do something. At least that's what they're saying. The David Allen, the West Region president for NASCAR, he says that the market is extremely important to NASCAR, but we've got to do something. I just don't know what and when just yet. So he's kind of out there, completely. Now, here's some of the things that they're talking about too. Now, Auto Club Speedway has been already torn down, played host to the final 2023 race at the Clash at the Coliseum. That's when California was running, or they should say the Southern Cal Tour. They ran on that half-mile temporary track installed atop the Coliseum's football field, but they didn't return this year after 3 years. And NASCAR had hoped to build a half-mile oval built on the site of the former Fontana Speedway, but that's been there for a long time, but they've got to figure out what to do. There's just a lot of questions right now at this point. What are they going to do about that 90 acres that they have out there, which nobody seems to know at this point, not even the head honchos at NASCAR.
Josh Berry in his first month with Wood Brothers, he just had a fourth place finish. He's looking pretty good out there, and seeing some love between Wood Brothers and Team Penske. Team Penske, the technical advisor there. Tell us about Josh Berry and his good first month here.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the driver, has a whole lot to do with the crew chief that they've got in there. And also, I think the dedication by Penske to go and to help the Wood brothers improve a little bit more from where they were. Things were dismal last year until Harrison Burton won the race, and he won that race at Daytona. And people then suddenly just went all into pieces. They were just crazy over the whole thing. They were so happy. But then after that, he didn't do anything. He just sat there, and it seemed like the team was just mired in this position, and it made the race and the win sort of seem like it was just a jinx. It kind of happened that way. It happened. But now with Josh Berry, who's a very experienced driver, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. would say it for himself, he's probably one of the best drivers he's ever had in the JR Motorsports or Junior Motorsports program. He knew that when he went over to the Wood Brothers racing team, that he was going to do things for him, and he has done really well. He had a great finish this past weekend when they were racing, and they're just hoping for bigger and better things. And I think a win could come for Josh Berry this season. He's just a great racer all the way around. Unfortunately, he's been caught up in some bad luck and some accidents over time, but that's just the way it goes, I guess. But he's definitely doing a great job for him.
There have been rumors that the Mexico City weekend, which is just 3 months away in June,
Mhm.
may not actually happen. What is the latest on that?
I don't know. I don't know about this. The rumor had started this past week, and or it's been going around here for just a little while. But the rumor had been going on about this whole thing in regard to not going to Mexico. Why, I don't know. There's not anything been released by NASCAR saying that we're kind of concerned about. The first things that kind of hit me is probably this whole thing of the immigration policy, also drug issues, whatever it might be. I mean, you have all these different things come into your mind about what could be going on south of the border about NASCAR. And actually, there's nothing that kind of adds up. And NASCAR says they're still going for that race and they're looking forward to it. But I think it's got a lot more. If the rumors are out there, I think the rumors are probably having to do with sponsorship, advertising, whatever it may be. It's got something to do with it. Somewhere down the line, it does. I don't really quite know yet. NASCAR's not released anything, said anything that they're thinking twice about the race, but things can change really quick with NASCAR, and it could happen to where they end up maybe not going. But I don't foresee that happening. If that were to happen, that they were to not go, they would probably opt to go to Daytona, maybe race there on the circle or I should say, the road course inside there at Daytona. But we're still kind of far off from this, so we'll just have to wait and see. Also, to see how this is going to, what this is going to shape up for NASCAR and for Mexico City, with this race coming up.
Last thing, preview. Get us ready for Vegas. NASCAR's still out in the Southwest. What can we look forward to? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but I guess maybe not with NASCAR.
Right. Well, I that's a that's a loaded gun right there, Chris. I don't know how you want to say it with some of these drivers the way that they are. Some of
There we
them,
go.
yeah, the way some of them are. Some of them like to gamble, and some of them like to do these sort of things and stuff. But you know, uh, I don't know. This race coming up here at Las Vegas, there is so much on the line right now for drivers like quote unquote Christopher Bell, who needs to continue that momentum going. It's also a time for Joe Gibbs Racing to kind of figure out what's going wrong with Chase Briscoe. They've been also close to some wins, but they've not managed to be able to get in the win column out of it. And then, of course, you've got the Ty Gibbs situation. What's going on? Denny Hamlin. We've not mentioned Denny Hamlin too much. Denny Hamlin has been in some situations, and also he ended up finishing, what was it? I think second or maybe in the top five this last race, but. He wasn't happy. I heard some audio afterwards about certain things going on in the race, and he was just, it's a different Denny Hamlin than what we've heard from previous seasons. He's very outspoken when he's on his podcast. Don't get me wrong, but he was very outspoken when he was inside the car driving the number 11 Toyota around. But it remains to be seen how this is going to shape up for Joe Gibbs Racing. And then also, I can't rule out possibility of a good performance from Kyle Busch. This is his home track. He loves the track there at Las Vegas, and so I'm sure it's going to be a homecoming for him every time they go to Las Vegas. It's always a homecoming for Joe Gibbs, or excuse me, for Kyle Busch and his race team. So I'm kind of hoping that he'll come up with something good. But hey, don't rule out Kyle Larson just as of yet. Kyle Larson has also been an unfortunate bystander out of this whole thing of some wrecks and some bad luck happening. So who knows what will really happen this coming Sunday when they race at Las Vegas.
Well, we covered a lot here in a half hour. Rod, as always, thank you for your time, your insight, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.